Here in the Northern Rockies, dark winter months are outlasted in basements, dens, and nooks, where kindred souls gather to share intel, swap fly patterns, and relive the memories from seasons past. This gathering spot, known locally as a February room, is the inspiration for this podcast. No matter the season, the door is always open to those with a fly fishing story to tell. Brought to you by CD Fishing USA, the North American distributor for Composite Development's fly rods and fishing accessories. Tech, precision, ingenuity, legacy. Go to cdfishing.us and follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Here's your host, Lauren Carnop, and this is the February Room.
Alberta's Bow River is renowned for producing world-class angling and world-class anglers. One member of this club is guide outfitter Paula Shearer with PS on the Fly. Thank you so much for joining me today, Paula.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you today.
And you're my first Canadian on the podcast, and I can't wait to hear more about your home waters. But before we get into that, I'd love to hear a fishing story from you.
Absolutely. I think there's a good one considering has been a year today. And that was last year, I flew to Cuba with Rio. I was with Simon Gosworthy, David Riley, and Sabrina Barnes. And as we flew to Cuba, we had no idea that COVID was about to take over the world. So when we got to Cuba, it was, I think we got there about March 6th. And for Canada's side, there was one or two cases, but it wasn't anything to worry about. And on the state side was only a handful as well. So when we got to Cuba, everything seemed all normal. We actually got onto a boat. And what's interesting is the Cubans, they had their doctors come on and they actually had us all checked over to make sure we didn't have fevers, coughs, or anything like that. So as small as COVID was at the time, Cuba was still looking at it and still checking it out and making sure that we didn't have it. So we got onto this boat and we left port for the next 7 days. And we had no cell reception, no internet. We were completely 100% off grid. And the only focus we had was to go fishing. So we had a great week of fishing. The company is, as always, the kind of the best part when you go with a group. And we were going for tarpon, casting at permit, fishing for bones, jacks, you name it. We had an entire week of fishing. And interestingly enough, when we turned around and we're making our way back, I believe it was March 14th or so, 14th or 15th, we thought all was well in the world until I got back into reception, because being the only Canadian, I was actually the only one that had a phone that was able to have internet and call. So when I got back close to port, my phone blew up and I was getting messages like it's an apocalypse, the world is shutting down, people are dying. There is like, you're gonna have to quarantine. And I had no idea what was going on. Like, I literally just got back into reception and my entire phone just went nuts of people messaging me of just this horror event of an apocalypse. So we did get back to port, and I think that's where kind of the eye-opener of the next year came. And yeah, it was certainly something to be lucky, because we got to go on this last trip, but at the same time we had to come back into this new world of COVID.
Did you have to quarantine when you came back?
I did. I actually got to stay I got to stay 2 extra days in Cuba because I had to stay at a resort till my flight was going to take off. And there was basically nobody on the resort. So I spent 2 days on the empty beach enjoying the sun, because I knew it was going to be the last time for quite a while heading up to Canada. So I enjoyed the last 2 days. And then when I got back onto the plane, it was definitely a weird sense in the world to travel, because you can tell a lot of people were afraid No one knows what's happening, really what's going on. People wearing masks. People were like, don't touch your face. And the same thing for me was like, wear your buff and don't touch your face. Like the big thing was just don't touch your face and stuff like that. And flying back to one of the Canadian international airports is kind of where reality set in, because I literally saw people flying in hazmat suits. Like people were wearing gloves, and it was actually a really weird sense of time of like not knowing what the world was going to happen at that time, and knowing that as soon as I get back, I have to quarantine for 2 weeks and avoid all my friends and family. So
what an adjustment, going from like probably one of the most memorable trips ever, catching bonefish, catching permit, and going straight to just having to be in a room. Like at least you could have looked at your phones. Like last week, I was on this amazing ocean and saw some blue skies, to having to be kind of quarantined. It seemed like for a lot of people, it just took a hard right turn where it was like, hey, what are your thoughts on COVID? I mean, I remember my girlfriend just and I driving, like talking about COVID, and then literally 3 days later, everything, stopped. And it was like, wear face mask. And it didn't seem like a gradual, like all of a sudden it was like, do not touch your face, do not go outside. And it was a really scary moment, I think, for everybody. But I couldn't imagine going internationally and then trying to get back home.
Yeah, I think the big thing was just having no idea about it. Like, it was just something that was like, oh, 1 or 2 people in the States, I think, had it, or I think Canada had like 2 people, and you kind of just thought, oh, it's whatever it is, it'll go away, it's not going to be a big deal. And then you're gone for an entire week with no news, and you come back and people are dying and the world's like shut down, and you're like, what did I miss? And can I please just stay on the boat and turn around and go back?
Yeah, like just leave me on the boat, I'll be fine. But yeah, no, I mean, very sad and horrible, because I mean, obviously a lot of people's lives have been lost, and livelihoods too. And yeah, I hope that here soon, with everything that's coming out with vaccines, that we can kind of get to a more normalcy, slowly but surely. I'm hoping, fingers crossed. Well, before we I would love to hear more about Alberta, because we were talking earlier, which is hilarious, even though I live in Missoula, Montana, and I'm only about probably 4 hours from the Canadian border. I've never been to Canada, and I don't have a record.
We're not scary. I promise you, we're not scary people up here.
Well, and it's so beautiful. I was like looking at the pictures, looking at the Bow River, and I would just love to hear a little bit more about your home waters.
Yes, absolutely. So we kind of have 2 main systems that we kind of fish, at least I do, as well as guide. We have the Bow River, which is kind of a world-renowned river. It's kind of known for its quality of fish versus its quantity. It still has good quantity, but definitely the quality is something that is quite well known for. And what's interesting is it does run right through the city of Calgary, which I believe is 1.4 million people, I think, give or take an amount there. But it runs through a big city and then exits out and heads up to northeast Canada, up to Hudson's Bay, is actually where part of the Bow River ends when it joins up with some other things. So we usually, when we fish there, I do a lot of guiding on the drift boat with that. We target big browns and rainbows. And then when we kind of get away from the Bow River, we start to head west into the mountains. And when we get to the mountains, we have lots of smaller streams that kind of have the bull trout and the cutthroat trout. And depending where you want to go, there's usually about 5 main rivers that you can kind of go shuffle up and down from and go into its tributaries to kind of target those fish. So those are probably the 2 most known areas, is the Bow River and then our western cutthroat streams. And so for me, I guide the bow, and then I also take clients into the mountains and do walk-in wades and hikes for cutthroat and the occasional bull trout.
Oh my gosh, I would absolutely love that. Like, I love hiking and I love fishing. So for me, it's more about the adventure. So to be able to kind of get a little bit of cardio in there as well as...
There's lots of cardio. Yep, definitely lots of cardio.
Absolutely. Have you ever had any experiences where the bull trout, like you've had a fish on and a bull trout comes in and attacks one of the fish?
That's actually really common. So it's not something that happens once or twice. I've had it happen a ton. Like
Really?
I get it happen a couple times a year. If you're in an area where there's a bull trout around and you have a cutthroat and let's just say you're fishing for cutthroat, quite often a bull will come in and attack a cutty. It doesn't always get the cutty and take it, but it definitely clenches onto it and gives it a good pull. So for me, usually that happens a few times a year, and I've actually landed a really big bull. I think it was probably 32-inch bull that actually ate the small cutty I had. Like, I don't know how I managed to land it because I had fished for a cutthroat with a dry fly, and it was just a small, like 10-inch cutty. Like, it was a little guy, and this bull came in, latched onto it, and I kind of was like, okay, that's the end of this fight kind of thing. And didn't expect to land it. I didn't expect it to happen, but the hook, when it ate the cutty, somehow got caught, like hooked in the mouth. So I ended up hooking this bull in the mouth, even though it ate the cutty, and I ended up landing this really big bull, which is actually pretty cool. It's kind of it's kind of neat to think that bulls kind of rule the territory when it comes to certain rivers and stuff like that.
Well, that's amazing that you get that opportunity to have bull trouts do that so often. I mean, we do have bull trouts here on our rivers, but it doesn't happen very often that, when you catch a fish. But it almost seems like it's a lucky thing to happen. The fact that you get to even land one is even more amazing.
Yeah, you don't normally land them. Like I said, that's the rare part. We definitely see it a lot. I've actually had bull trout beach themselves because I netted the cutty and it came in and charged at the net, which is in the water, with the cutty so hard that it actually beached itself up onto the bank. So we actually, like, me and my friends have to push the bull trout back into the water just because it's so opportunistic at trying to get the cutty that it just charged at it and ended up beaching itself.
Insane. That is so insane. Are the rivers pretty I guess, are a lot of anglers on the river the same time as you, or is it pretty much kind of spaced out?
Well, the one thing I've noticed with the COVID world is definitely an uptake of anglers in our fisheries, whether they're new anglers or they're anglers that just can't travel. I think that might be one of the main things as well, because no one can travel. We've definitely had a lot more anglers on the rivers. So for us, when it comes to the mountain streams, you really have to hike back and kind of get to that water where you can kind of get away from people. And personally, I love people by all means, but I like fishing in my own area, and I really take joy in kind of that solitude with just my friends and in the area. So it's getting a little bit busy in some rivers, certain rivers more than others, but certainly if you work hard enough and you hike far enough back in the mountains, you can definitely get away from people. And then when it comes to the boat, there's quite a few boats as well. But to be honest, I found last year not that bad for boats. I think a lot of people headed to the mountains and didn't fish the boat as much. So I didn't find the boat super, super busy last year.
Okay, so when you say you go up to the mountains, are these just mountain river streams that you're fishing, or are they part of? Oh, okay.
So what's interesting about Alberta, for those who haven't been to Alberta, one of the best ways I can kind of describe Alberta is we're quite identical to Colorado.
Okay.
Denver, Colorado, and Calgary are pretty similar, actually. Like, the mountains are right there. The prairies are to the east. You have the foothills. So for those who haven't been to Alberta and are wondering what it kind of looks like, if you've been to Denver, Colorado, we're very similar in landscaping. So those mountain streams and those that you fish, those are very similar to those ones as well. Oh
my gosh, well, beautiful. I'm actually born and raised in Colorado Springs. I never went fishing though in Denver, in Colorado Springs. I kind of grew up learning fly fishing later in life here in Missoula after my husband being a fishing guide kind of threw the fly rod in my hand. In the beginning, I just was awful and it was not enjoyable. I was like, gosh, like how do people like fly fishing? I think as you get older, you kind of get set in the ways of the things that you enjoy. And so for me, fly fishing kind of became a passion a little bit later in life. And I kind of had to keep getting better at it because I think it's I'm super competitive. So if I don't like get things right away, I get frustrated. I'm like, wow, I'm not going to do this again. And fly fishing is a very patient sport, and you can't. I don't know one person that's like picks up a fly rod and it's like, wow, you've done this all your life, and it's a really hard sport. So I mean, you though on the other hand, you grew up fly fishing.
I did grow up. Yep, I grew up fly fishing from a young age, but I also have an athletic background, a pretty competitive athletic background. So for me, I grew up fly fishing as a kid, and I still fished in high school and stuff like that, but my kind of friends were definitely not the outdoorsy friends. So rather than go to some of like the parties or like out for like girls' night and stuff like that, sometimes I would be like, I can't, and I would kind of like secretly go fishing. So yeah, I started fly fishing probably before I was 8, but it was just mostly trolling flies in the lakes of BC. And then by the time I was 8, there were some dry flies coming off on the lake, and I asked my dad to teach me the basics of casting. I can't imagine I was really pretty at it. Lots of tangles, of course, but over time I got better. And then by the time I was 11, I ended up rowing myself out into the lakes to fish alone. And yeah, it kind of grew from there. And so I did a lot of fly fishing by myself in my teen years. And then I ended up continuing to fly fish into now, where it's what I do for a living. But it definitely came from like sports. Like I was an athlete. I did a skeleton for Team Canada and was high caliber goalie for like hockey and ringette.
Wow.
Like that. So I feel like for me, fly fishing, as competitive as I was in sports, for me, fly fishing was the one thing that I could step away from my training 6 days a week, 6 hours a day, and step away for a few hours and go fly fishing and escape that full-time athlete life. But at the same time, being an athlete, I think, has also been the reason why I've always strived to be better, but I've never strived to be better than other people. I just strive to be better for myself personally. Like, I think as a person, I can always continue to grow and be better. So the only competition I have in fly fishing is with myself.
And now a brief message from our sponsors. Here at CD USA, we have owned nearly every brand of fly rod throughout our 30-year careers as guides and globetrotting anglers. When we discovered Composite Development's flagship fly rods, the XL2 and the ICT2, we uncovered a secret harbored by the Kiwis for 4 decades. Born from Japanese Toray, CD's unique manufacturing process involves winding the graphite fibers inside the blank, negating heavy thread wraps at the end of each section, creating a lighter and more durable fly rod. Check out the XLS2 and the ICT2 at your local CD USA dealer or go to cd-fishing.us. And remember to go fishing.
I love it. You said skeleton?
Yeah.
That's like the bobsledding, right? Like it's super dangerous.
So bobsled is the one where you have 2 to 4 people inside the bobsled.
Yes.
And then luge is where you have a person feet first on a sled. And then skeleton is where you have a person head first on a sled. So yeah, I did skeleton for Team Canada, and my goal was to make the Olympics, but I had to quit all my athletic sports due to too many head injuries.
Oh my gosh. I mean, because of the skeleton, you've like fallen off the skeleton and like hit the side of what do you call that when you kind of shoot down?
The track, yeah. But it's actually not so much that way. So I have had lots of concussions in lacrosse. Like I played box lacrosse, so like full contact indoor lacrosse. And then I played like hockey and ringette. But what it came down to for the head injuries and stuff in skeleton wasn't so much of like crashes, because I actually didn't crash that much, thankfully. Crashes do hurt though. But most of them was when you go down the track, you get that shaken, I don't want to say like that shaken baby syndrome, but like that's kind of what it is, the vibrations. When you go down the track, because we don't have shocks and the track isn't like a skating rink flat, like it's got bumps and divots, and as you're going 70 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour down the track, you get a lot of vibrations. And since your head is only less than an inch from the ice, you get a lot of that vibrations, which in turn gives you micro concussions. So over time, hundreds of micro concussions don't do good for the head. So yeah, for me, it's now stay away from all contact sports and anything that can bother my head too much.
Well, I think you found the right career with fishing, because I don't think you're going to be doing any head concussions. Hopefully not. No slipping on the water or the rocks.
Occasionally there are some slips and slides, but I try and keep this noggin in good shape now.
So when did it come from like just a passion to being like, you know what, I'm going to be a guide outfitter?
I actually have this one day that it actually came, like I decided, and it was actually a friend of mine who did skeleton as well. And she was also suffering from post-concussion syndrome. And she asked me if I could take her out to like fishing and teach her so that she could get out of the house, because anyone who's had post-concussion syndrome knows that it can be a little bit of a long journey. And so I took her out, I put her in my waders, and we got her into fish. And I just remember, you know, like I've put a lot of people into fish, even when I wasn't guiding. I've taken my friends, but it was kind of this exact day that I kind of thought, you know what, my friends are guides. I really want to do this. Like, I love putting people into fish. Like, I love being a part of people's good memories. And so for me, it kind of was like that aha moment of like, okay, you've taken lots of friends out fishing and family and stuff, but you have friends that do this as a career, and why don't you? Because this is what you enjoy doing and this is what you love. So it was that exact moment that I said, okay, that's it. I'm gonna work hard to be a guide. I got lots of information and mentored by a lot of great friends of mine who were guides and owned outfitters as well. So they kind of, over the years, we've all taken each other under the wing kind of thing, and I learned a lot from them. And I spent an extra year, if not longer, really trying to perfect being a guide. Because for me, being a guide isn't just being a guide, and I didn't want to start into guiding being that on the bottom, like, oh, that's the new guide, like kind of thing. I really wanted to at least start in the middle of the pack when it comes to knowledge, experience, and being confident that my clients are going to have a fantastic day. So I actually took extra time just perfecting my skills, because like I said, for me, it's I'm not in a competition with anyone else. I made it with myself to be better so I could be better for my clients. And so from that moment, I kind of worked on what I needed to do, and eventually I got into guiding, and now I own my own outfitting business.
And a very successful one. What was like the biggest challenge for you making the jump from being an angler to a guide?
I think a lot of people don't discuss how mentally challenging being a guide can be. It's easy to put people into fish if you know how to get people into fish. If you know all about the entomology and you know how to catch fish, you should be able to put clients. But just because you can catch fish doesn't necessarily mean you can get other people to catch fish. Like there is definitely a skill involved, because I can catch fish, but my client's skills may not be my skills, and I need to find the skills in order to get them into fish. So for me, the first couple of years of guiding was really a mental one. And I put myself really high standards, probably standards that are a little too hard, but I found that I was making the expectation higher for myself when in fact the clients were not my expectations were way higher than they were. They were having phenomenal days, and I was thinking in my head, oh, this could have been better. They could have caught more fish. They could have caught bigger fish. But for me, I had to step outside my own mental challenges and frustration and realize my expectations are not the client's expectations. And once I learned that, it's gone a long ways when it comes to guiding.
I mean, I think that's like a huge, amazing kudos to you for really taking the extra steps. And also, I have to say, I was watching your video about going out fishing in the cold. And I love that you gave tips on how to stay safe, because it can be dangerous out there if you don't know what you're doing.
What's actually really sad is that tips I put out a few weeks ago. It was the next day we actually had a fatality in the river, and 3 days later we had another one.
No.
Yeah,
Do they know what happened?
They weren't anglers. I will say they weren't anglers, but it's really sad, because I think, like, whether you're an angler or not, you really have to be aware of the ice and the potential of the dangerous stuff. And I think for me, one of the reasons why I did it is we've seen some people promote unsafe fishing in the sense of being on ice that they shouldn't. And unfortunately, young people are watching these and following these. And as any angler has any experience or does things safely should realize that there are people watching you. And I don't want to do things that other people will watch me and do if it's unsafe.
I think it's pros and cons to social media, right? You see people catching fish and it's cold and you're thinking, wow, I'm kind of a novice at this. Let me get out there. And it's still Mother Nature you're going against. And you can't predict what Mother Nature is going to do. And you can't predict that, how thick ice is going to be. And that's just terrifying that that's happened in Alberta.
I've had friends, like, thankfully nothing's happened to them, like literally broke through the ice right through the middle, and luckily their like hip pack kept them up on top that they could climb out, or where it broke off, and luckily someone was there to kind of guide their buddy down and get them out. So I think the main thing I had in the main fishing tips was, no matter where you go, and this is the same thing, it doesn't apply to even being on ice, is where's a safe place to get out if you were to go in. So no matter where I am, whether it's mountain streams, whether it's a boat, if I were to fall in, I'm always mentally in my head thinking about where can I safely get out. If it's a fast section, okay, I can get down. If I go down that area, I can get out there. Or if things happen on the mountains and I slip, where can I get out? Because sometimes those mountain streams can be a little bit faster water, and there isn't as many some places to get out in some places. So whether it be ice or whether it just be in general, is just mentally keep an eye out on a place that you could safely get out. And of course, safely net fish and handle them.
Yep. I mean, I actually think about that all the time. And also about bears. I'll always think as I'm casting, I'm like, okay, a black bear comes over to the left side. What do you do? And I'm like, and I'll grab my bear spray. I'm like, okay, make sure you know where the lever is. And like you said, I mean, you really have to understand where your surroundings are, and to think that maybe the worst case scenario, how would you survive those situations? So I thought that was super helpful.
I love bears, by the way. We're around them a lot.
Oh, have you ever had a bear encounter up there?
Tons. Every year I get a few.
Are you nervous? Are you like, is it black bear or grizzly bear?
Grizzlies.
Oh my gosh, that's terrifying. Do they just not even bother you? Or are they just like, hello?
Same thing. We are smart about it. We try to do what we can. I was actually taking a friend of mine, her name's Brigitte, fishing. I don't know how old she is. I love this lady dearly. She's amazing. I've kind of taken her under my wing for quite a few years. She's got to be in her mid to late 70s at least. And I was going down to this area, and I know that there's a lot of grizzlies in this area. So I was kind of telling Brigitte, like, when we go down, like, we have our bear spray. We just got to know where it is. Make sure it's accessible. And I was kind of giving her the steps, like, if you take out the bear spray, you immediately take off the safety kind of thing. You're going to back up. And I was kind of giving her just a little bit of details just in case. We ended up walking down to the lake. We turn the corner and there are 2 tiny cubs. And there's Mama Grizzly. Yep, Mama Grizzly's right there, like probably 40 feet from us, if that. And she was just eating the willows, and her 2 little cubs are just running back and forth. And so I was like, okay, Brigitte. So I took out the bear spray. I said, hey, Mama, like, you know, like, we're here. And we proceeded to just bear spray out and walk backwards, don't turn our backs to the bear, and just kind of slowly went out. Luckily, Mama was pretty chill eating the willows. But yeah, I've had a few follow me. We had one meet us at our truck before when we were fishing under a full moon. So there's definitely been some fun ones for sure. I just don't like the cougars.
The cougars. I always think of cougars because I'll be like running on a trail, like a mountain trail, and I always think, you know, I've watched this one episode, like I didn't know it was coming, or it was one of those series, and it was like this runner that was running, and she's like, the entire time I was running, I knew something was following me. I could feel like some eyes on me, and I always think about that every time I run out in the woods. I'm always like, I think about that series about this girl being attacked by a cougar. And I was like, how do you stop a cougar? You don't even know. They're cats. They're going to just like sneak up on you. Yeah.
I don't like them. I've had one that freaked me out, and it was, once again, nighttime, and we were hiking down from an alpine lake, and we were getting down, and my friends were a little bit ahead of me, and I was like, I'm totally being watched. Like, you just, every once in a while I could hear just the tiniest of sound, not like a crunch, but just something behind me. And I turn around and look back, and there's 2 eyes looking at me, and like a pair of eyes looking at me. And it was a cougar, and I had to like throw rocks, and called my friend, and I was like, hey, like, it's right there, like, and he's like, oh yeah, like, it's right there, and it's dark. So we started throwing rocks at it to spook it off. But yeah, I just don't like cougars.
Yeah,
I don't like having to throw rocks at cougars. Those are the ones I really don't like. Bears, I can do what I can by letting the bear know I'm there. We're super bear aware in the mountains here, constantly yelling to let the bears know we're looking for tracks. We're looking like that smell.
Yes,
we're definitely aware, because you don't always know, but you can kind of tell if they're around. So we're definitely cautious with bears and definitely let them know we're there. But when it comes to cougars, I really don't like throwing rocks at them, because I really don't like cougars.
Do you have wolves up in Alberta?
Yeah.
Do you see them?
We don't see them often. I have actually, when I was fishing in BC once, I had a pack of wolves just walk right by me, which was so cool. Like, it was a moment, like, they weren't, like, there was no fear for me or them, or we were my friends too. They just literally looked at us like and continued walking, and it was like one of the most amazing moments, because I made like eye contact and I was close, and it just looked, and it just continued on.
Wow, how cool to see that in their natural habitat. That's like such a rare sight.
Yeah, wolves are super rare. Yeah.
Well, and hopefully Willow, your dog, if they are around, they'll just think like, hey, she's already got her own pack. How is it fishing with your dog on the boat? Because I know for me, when we have our 2 dogs on our boat, they're always stepping in my line, but Willow seems like she kind of knows the deal.
Yeah, Willow's actually really good. So I don't take her in the drift boat as often, just because it's a little bit crowded. And if you're in a drift boat, we're kind of staying in the drift boat for the day. So if I have 2 friends, because I don't take her when I'm guiding, but I have 2 friends with me, sometimes I'll take her. Sometimes if she has a spot, or if there's just one other person I'm with, then she has her own spot. But the big one with her is I take her on my Watermaster a ton, and she's so good on the water. She'll just sit there. I can row, we'll pull over and fish, and she just jumps off and does her own thing. She's really good because she is an independent dog, in the sense that I don't have to like constantly be watching her. She won't run off. Like, that's the nice thing. She won't run off. She'll just kind of wander around, and she likes to look and hunt for mice. And and stuff like that. And she's independent in the sense that I don't have to pay attention to her all the time because she's off just doing her little thing, and at the same time she won't run away. And when I jump back into my water master, she jumps back onto the back of the boat because she doesn't want to get left behind, and off she goes. So yeah, she's really good when it comes to the water master, and I've just basically trained her from just a pup, whether it's being on the boat or just being around animals. She knows really not to chase anything. And if something comes by, she kind of stays close, which is nice. Other than mice, she will, if you're a mouse, she is going to get you or try and go after you. Every other animal she's pretty good with, other than some birds.
Oh, nothing worse when your dog comes up and there's like a little tail hanging on the side of their mouth. I'm like, nope, cannot do it. But yeah, we have a Brittany poodle mix, and I remember we went fishing, and I swear every time I take my fly line on the ground, she's like, I'm going to step on this one, and then I'm going to take my right foot and put my tail through this, and she is just knotted up. And I remember one time we did like a camping trip, and we hiked up in the mountains, and I put my fly on, and I took one cast, and I set the hook, and I think I just probably thought it was I just set the hook way too hard. It was like a small little bow. It was like, tiny, maybe 2 inches, and the thing goes flying, and then Benna's her name comes in. I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm never taking you fishing ever again. That was the most miserable experience with your flies, the fly being tied all around her, then the fish was going to be injured. I was like, oh, that was an exhausting day.
How is she now? Is she better?
No, every time I even put the fly rod on, she thinks, well, and she's also a bird dog. So I think what she's thinking, my husband's been teaching her to point. And so he'll take a fly rod and grab a pheasant wing and put it at the end of the fly line. So when he's teaching her to point, so I think she's now considered the fly rod to be a bird wing. So she thinks it's time for her to go out there and start pointing at the fly rod. Anyways,
Are Brittany's pointers or are they flushers?
They're pointers.
Willow's, she's trained, Willow and her brother Riley are both trained for birds as well. And they're flushers.
Did you guys have a successful year this year?
I don't, even though I have my hunting license and everything, I don't really hunt, but my dad goes on these hunting trips and takes them. And yeah, they had some good years, brought home some pheasant, and the dogs were pretty happy, other than the burrs. We all know the burr situation.
It is so bad. Well, and like I said, we got this Brittany poodle mix because as I've gotten older, my allergies have gotten worse. And so she's got like that poodle kind of hair, and she comes back, and the burrs are everywhere under the armpits and her ears. And it's like, it's actually a pain in the butt because then you're spending more time grooming them than actually the time they probably went out in the woods.
They had a bad experience. Yeah, Willow and Riley had a really, really, really bad experience this fall. And my dad drove back. He was out, I think it was 4 hours away, and he just drove back from his trip because they were armored. Like I've never, there was no hair. It was just an armor.
Oh, gosh.
And it took each dog, I think I worked on Willow, and it worked over 3 hours. Like we tried to even get the clippers. You couldn't even get the clippers through. Oh,
and especially like under their chest, like on their chest, under like their arms. Yeah. That's like the worst spot to ever have to deal with dogs.
Even with the vest they got in, like they had vests on, and it got down into the vest, and the dogs couldn't move. Like they couldn't move their legs. Like they were literally armored.
And it's even worse if they came back and they didn't even see any birds. So all you did was get a bunch of burrs. You're like, that did not make any sense.
Yeah, exactly.
So what kind of flies are really successful on the Bow River?
I feel like flies are kind of like what you have confidence. I think almost any fly will work if you have confidence, but I certainly have a couple that are kind of my go-to. I'm a big fan of the baby Ganga by the Charlie Craven. It's not that it's a very special fly or anything like that. For me, I just do a lot of trout spay. It's a lot of swinging flies. And just based on my confidence, I've caught some really, really nice rainbows and browns off this fly. So for me, it's just kind of like a go-to because I've just because of that confidence kind of thing with it, and having some really nice success with it with some rainbows and browns. But I also like the good old sparkle minnows when it comes to streamer fishing out of the boat. the stonefly, like the Henry's Fork stone and stuff like that. So for me, I feel like I shuffle through my favorite fly. It should be like my favorite fly of the week almost, but definitely some go-tos are that baby ganga and that sparkle minnow for sure.
Oh, I love seeing a streamer in the water too. Like when you can see the flashabou kind of going through and the water hits it. I mean, I've never had any luck where a fish actually ate it, but I still like seeing it in the water. Maybe I need to go up to Alberta and go with you.
Yeah, the flies are for the angler.
Yeah.
Whatever looks pretty to us, we're like, ooh, bright, shiny. Like this, we're kind of like ravens that way. And then we're like, oh, let's put that in. And then the fish still happens to eat it. And so we're like, ooh, really like this fly. That's kind of how I look at it.
Oh, I know. We'll have like our fly box and Justin will open it. He's like, so which one do you want to do? Like, which one do you want to pick? And inevitably, I will always choose one that has a little bit of flashabou. And then he just picks like kind of like just a regular green and olive. And he gets so many bites. And I'm like, well, maybe I need to switch my tactic. But I just really love the look of this fly. I would love to hear also just another story about maybe some mountain, river, something a little bit more of your home waters.
Yeah. I have some amazing clients when it comes to guiding. I feel super fortunate because I kind of have a 75% rebook rate. So anyone who books me generally books again within the next year or two. And so I've really been able to connect with my clients and like I know them so well and they're just such great people. But there's one that I think was I think it was 2 years ago now. Yes, I think that's right. Because I have a father and son duo, and I've had them a few times. The father lives in Montana. I think he lives in Whitefish. I believe he lives in Whitefish. And he used to be a guide. And he's got to be in his 80s. And his son, who's the main client of mine, he lives in Calgary, and he's got a couple adult kids too. So when I've taken them out, I've always had good days with them. Like we've always had fantastic days, and it's always been like a father and son duo. And this, like I said, this fellow's got to be early 80s, and there's something so amazing to see somebody who just gets out at that age and goes fishing and catches fish. But 2 years ago, I had them again, and unfortunately, as what happens when people get older, their health kind of deteriorates, and it was kind of one of those days where we kind of knew that this is probably going to be the last time that he was going to get to go fishing, especially with me and with his son in my boat kind of thing. And so I think it's kind of one of those things where I just want to give someone the best day possible, especially when I kind of know that like how important this day is. Like it really is about this father and son's experience. So we went out and fishing, and it was early spring, and sometimes the fishing cannot be that great. It's very hit and miss. The rainbows are off in another river spawning, and that river's closed. So usually it's just kind of the browns and the rainbows that aren't spawning that are hanging around. So I kind of let them know that it was that it's probably going to be a little bit of a slower day. It's spring. The rainbows are off doing their thing in another river, but we're going to give it a good go. And so we went out, and we ended up having a fantastic day. Like, it really was about giving him the best experience possible. And like I said, he could barely walk. He no longer could stand up. So everything he did was fishing sitting down. And I think that day he hooked 5 or 6 really nice browns. Like it was a really good day. And just to see the look on his face and the joy and the happiness from his son being able to be there with him, and knowing that, like, this might be one of the last times, and it was a good one. And yeah, like I said, for me that one really stands out because I can see that in the future with like my dad and my family members, you know, like when they get to that age, there's going to be that one day that, you know, like that will be their last time that they can fish. And I can just hope that it's spent with family. Like, and it was, like I said, I could just totally relate to that in the future, and just being a part of one of those last fishing memories with him and his dad meant the world to me.
Oh my gosh. I mean, you kind of just hit home there. My husband's dad, my father-in-law, they went to Guatemala and went sail fishing, and that trip, Dennis is his name, wasn't doing really well, and but he had an amazing time. Caught fish of a lifetime for him, and was with his son and with a couple other buddies. And as soon as they came back, he was diagnosed with dementia. And then that was the last time he went fishing. And then a year later, he passed away. And it's almost ironic that the last thing that Dennis was able to do was to go fishing with his son in Guatemala. And, you know, I think that's how we'd all like to spend our last memories, is with friends and family and doing the things that we love. So yeah, that's a great story. And you brought that together, and that's going to be a memory that they have forever.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, I just feel grateful to contribute to some of people's best memories. I think that's, being a guide isn't about always putting people on the most fish. It's about giving people a great day. And I didn't necessarily become a guide to put people on fish. I do that as well, but it's to contribute to people's memories. I think that when it comes down to it, on the days that are tough fishing, and you're working with clients just to get a few in the boat kind of thing, I think being able to be a part of some of their best memories, and with whether it be friends, father, sons, husband, wives, father, daughter, like you name it, all those, just being a part of that, and having people tell the story about the fish that you help them get, for me, is worth $1 million.
100%. I love that. Well, if people want to continue on sharing, creating some new memories with you, and what's the best method for them to get a hold of you?
The best way to get a hold of me is definitely go through my website. It is www.psonthefly.com. It's my guiding website, but on the bottom it also has my email. And whether you're looking to book a guided trip, if you are someone that is looking, I highly recommend booking as early or as soon as you can, or even a year in advance. But also, if you're just looking for information and stuff, you can certainly email me. Or you can also reach me at my Instagram account, which is just my name, Paula Shearer, on Instagram. And if you're looking on Facebook, once again, it's just PS on the Fly. So those are the best and easiest ways to kind of reach me.
Well, and you have such great content on your Instagram account, and I have to laugh because you have so many followers. I was telling Justin, I was like, Paula could be walking around Missoula, and she probably, of all the people that are following her, the population of Missoula, like you could be walking around and be like, oh, there's a follower. Do you have a lot of people who are like, hey, Paula, it's nice to see you? And you're like, oh, how do they know me? But they're just like, know you via Instagram.
It does happen. And like I said, I'm super grateful that people are just interested in what I do. By all means, I've never gone on Instagram to be more than anything that I am, and the fact that people follow and like to see what I get to do, for me is just it is such an eye opener, because I just never expected it, and I'm super thankful and grateful, and humbled by those who like to follow along with what I do.
Well, it's been a great pleasure talking with you today, Paula, and I really appreciate you taking the time today to talk with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate talking with you guys, and I think it once the borders open up, which I'm hoping is quite soon, I think you should plan a trip up to Canada. I'm told we're quite welcoming. We're pretty good up here.
You know it. I'm going to I'm gonna like book a trip with a PS on the fly, and I'll be like, see, I came to Canada. I finally made it to Canada. Because if I'm gonna go to Canada, I'm gonna be like, make it big. I'm gonna like bells and whistle. Like, here comes Lauren Carnop. She's going fishing.
There you go. There's lots of places, and a lot of people like to check out Banff as well. So there's lots of places to go and people to see, and definitely no shortage of beautiful scenery here.
Go to thefebruaryroom.com, where you can access a complete library of our podcast and read more about our guests, their fishing stories, and favorite fly patterns. We're always looking for exceptional fly fishing yarns, and if you have one to spin, shoot us an email at info@thefebruaryroom.com. The February Room is always free, but if you feel like throwing a nickel in the pond, we appreciate any additional listener support. For companies and individuals interested in sponsorship opportunities, please contact us for our media kit. Thanks for stopping by the February Room, and we'll see you down here next week.